Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello once again. Welcome to the Simulationist podcast, iteration 54 on September the 15th, 2013. My name...
Thunderstorming.
Yes, it is thunderstorming outside. I am Josh Trelevin, and with me as always...
Ryan Kirkby.
Hey.
But there's no thunder to announce my presence, so...
Oh, bad time. Well, we could start again. And
No. Let's keep going. We've got enough momentum built already.
So we got a thunderstorm going. It would be really cool if the power went out because we're recording this using batteries, so we can sort of bring you along with us. Of course, you'll be hearing this after the fact, so, you know, if everything got washed away...
If the power went out, notify us now. Let's see how we can work this.
Exactly. Just send an email back in time.
Yeah, well, you can send emails at incredible distances. Why not just, aim it back in time a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I suppose if you invent a time machine, you kind of have all the time you need. So, start now.
What do we want? Time machines. When do we want it? It's irrelevant.
Exactly.
So,
is that XKCD?
I've seen it on a few T-shirts and a few signs. Some actual people protesting, sort of thing. I don't know who first came up with it, but if time travel is around, it could be one of those infinite loop things, like who started it, when the person brings it back in time to start it.
Well, I've heard it postulated that time travel would corrupt and pollute the timeline so much that every timeline with time travel in it would ultimately converge on a timeline in which time travel was not possible.
I just like the mathematical proof they have that you can go back in time, but you cannot alter things to prevent anything from not going back in time.
Okay. Is there a proof or just
it's a mathematical proof.
Somebody did that?
Yeah, they're working on something like, if the nature of the universe works this way according to this theory, then, you can go back in time, but you can't alter it to such a degree that you can't cause a paradox. Which I like inherently.
You don't like paradoxes?
Paradoxes. Well, I mean, you can take the whole paradox about I shoot an arrow at you, but in order for the arrow to hit you, it has to cross half the distance, and then half that distance, half that remaining distance, and so forth, infinity, and it will never touch you. When I'm fairly certain there's a long history of people getting shot by arrows and dying from them. So clearly, the paradox is existing only within a framework of hypothetical, because it doesn't work in reality.
Yeah, that's true.
Paradoxes, I appreciate them as a theoretical thing, not as because they don't appear in practice.
Yeah, and it occurred to me too, people say sometimes, mathematics is the language of the universe, and the universe operates according to mathematics. And in a way, I mean, I don't think that's right, because mathematics is a model that basically fits the universe quite well in a lot of cases, extremely well in a lot of cases, but it doesn't have to be the case that the universe conforms to how we think mathematics works.
I think it actually works the other way around. Mathematics conforms to the universe.
It could be.
If the math didn't work for the universe, then it wouldn't be actual math, it'd just be people scribbling random numbers.
Yeah, that's true. Although I think there's always they talk about, how Newton was so accurate on Earth, and then Einstein came along, and he's like, oh, well, in these cases, when you're...
This is only locally valid within the framework of even the solar system itself.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of... But how did we get on to math? before we even get started.
That's why we have a video recording of where we got this far. But, yes, this is the 54th iteration. What did you do this week before we get on to any other big tangents?
Okay. What have I been doing? I've been doing more Space Boot One's Garden on the YouTube Let's Play, so I've been doing that. I finished off my sheep farm. I think I've been talking about my sheep farm for like forever. It's done to the point where I'm not going to do anything else with it. And I have all the wool I could ever want.
So you're not going to mod in some sort of like shearing golem to just walk around shearing sheep?
Oh, well, I wasn't until you gave me that brilliant idea.
I just like the visual image I've already constructed for them. They're like a person made out of scissors. And scissors and scissors and scissors all over on each other.
Like Edward Scissorhands.
Like Edward Scissor Body.
Edward Scissor Body. Oh, that's very cool. And I did another villager, like, it's the zombie...
apocalypse that happens whenever you stay in a village too long.
Yeah, and of course they kill all my villagers. So I started brewing some potions and getting some golden apples so I can build up the villager population again.
Oh. Has it worked?
Well, the first villager I got, I don't even know where he went. He might still be alive in the world, but
you didn't just block him up in an area just to prevent him from going anywhere?
I started off that way. I was like, okay, so I got him, and I'm happy. Okay, so, I know it works. Now I'm going to set him free and see what he does. And he did. He went outside, and he went in the nice world, and walked around in the grass, so he had a good time. But I didn't see what happened, but I fear a zombie got him in the night.
So I know you can tether animals to a spot. Can you tether villagers?
I haven't actually tried that, so...
No. So I gotta say, I've had some rather nasty experiences whenever I wind up letting animals somewhat free to move them from one location to another. It'll be like I've got 4 sheep, and I'll let 2 of them out. One of them just ignores the fact that I've got what they want to eat, and they just walk off in like one direction.
Yeah.
I remember on my Mushroom Island once, I was walking across my bridge from A to B, and I noticed there's a chicken, just slowly swimming out to sea in just a particular direction. Like they got to be headed this way. There is something they've got to do. Yeah. I never saw that chicken again. Just disappeared. Just kept going in that direction until I no longer had to keep track of it.
Huh? Yeah.
So,
well, once they leave loaded chunks, they can't go anywhere.
No, I like to imagine that chicken is still moving, even now. The game's not even running, and it's still moving.
Yeah.
That chicken is gone, man. That chicken is gone. So maybe your villager's the same way. Maybe there's a quirk in the system every once in a while. They have to go to a particular location, some magical location within the world.
That'd be a good thing to believe, sure. But anyways, I got a second villager, and he's currently still alive and still hanging out.
Yay!
And I'm gonna build like a trail of houses back to the village, so that he can like move from door to door, or that's the idea. He probably won't, and they're notoriously stubborn. And there's a northwest bias in all of the
told that,
animals.
Yes.
Yeah, the animals and the villagers, anything with AI.
Come to think of it, that's the direction my chicken was headed off in. Was northwest.
Yeah.
Huh. Maybe that's where the magical land is, the magical NPC safe home.
So if you have a village in Minecraft, all your villagers will end up in the most northwesterly building because they stay around where there's doors, but yeah, they'll head for the most northwest one. So.
So don't build anything in the northwest corner and see where they start going then. Just start weeding down the houses area by area.
Yeah, one by one.
For science, of course, for science.
Yeah. Or you could like gradually have the village crawl back like southeast and like build a new house on the southeast corner, then nobody lives in it, but then destroy a house in the northwest corner and gradually move it back.
Wonderful migrating village.
Well,
I was thinking of trying to look up to see if anybody had like some sort of like gypsy mod where they were moving like in like mobile houses. Oh. But that seems pretty groovy too.
Yeah.
The entire town slowly moving bit by bit.
Yeah, I think that covers my week. Yeah.
Oh, as for me this week, I've actually abstained from that sort of game.
So no Minecraft.
No Minecraft. No Dwarf Fortress. a little reading on the forums for them, just to keep track of things. I deliberately kept away from pretty much all the games I have on Facebook.
Okay.
Just basic upkeep, make sure I'm not running behind, exchanging gifts back and forth sort of thing.
Okay.
And I've been focusing on culture this week.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I had the opportunity to watch both the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney version, and the Phantom of the Opera, the Claude Rains version.
Okay. Is that from the 90s or?
Claude Rains? No, Claude Rains one goes back to 60s, I believe.
Oh, okay. So
it was in color, but it was a weird color, so maybe they colorized it. It was an old one. It's decades old.
Okay.
And yes, the 1990s, or was it 2000 for the Hunchback from Disney?
The Hunchback. Yeah, it would be late 90s or early 2000s. Yeah.
And I gotta say, well, that'll be part of the topic for later on, but I found them both interesting in different ways, and I liked them for different reasons. But I had a lot of fun getting culture, and between the high culture there and a lot of work I've been doing, I think I finally cleansed my palate, as we were discussing last week.
Oh, right.
And I'm ready to start up on Neuromancer this week.
Neuromancer, very good.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say about the Hunchback and the Phantom of the Opera?
We'll be using them a little bit later on as examples for things for the topic. I do have a nice conspiracy-based thing for this week.
Okay, good.
Okay, so those of you following Canadian news know that the Quebec government has issued out its Charter of Values, which, by most intents and purposes, seems to be a very thinly veiled attempt to persecute the Muslim community, which is causing all sorts of problems. And a lot of people are asking, why did you even bother to try this? I mean, if you pass it, which doesn't seem likely, they need at least one other party to support them, and all the other parties have said, no, this is not happening.
Right.
But even if it does get passed, the federal government has said, yeah, we're going to challenge this to the full extent of the law. We're going to see you in court on this, which is about the only time I've really been supportive of the conservative government. They don't do a lot I support, but this one they've got my backing on that one.
Right. Yeah.
So all the federal party leaders have said, no, this is a horrible thing. So it really makes me wonder, like, what's going on with this? There's a chance they're going to wind up losing a lot of people from their hospitals, as the educated people just aren't allowed to work there anymore, and then Ontario picks them up or something, and then Ontario finally has enough medical professionals, and Quebec has nobody. Just like emptied out, bare minimum, just you're lucky to keep anyone alive sort of thing. Because there are a lot of people that have the religious ornamentation that they're preventing for their Charter of Values.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if it's that bad, because, I mean...
there's a decent amount of people in Quebec, especially within the educated fields, that would be denied roles within the government service.
Yeah, government service. I mean, like working in like a hospital or something.
You cannot wear the headscarves. You cannot wear anything deemed too big, and that's a really interesting amount, is what's too big versus small enough. Because I don't believe they have any set weight limit or size limit, how much area it occupies.
Yeah, once you start talking size limits and weight, like your crucifix can only weigh so many grams, it's like, I think that might be a little bit too intrusive, possibly.
At best, draconian. At worst, incompetent.
Yeah.
But so there's always a question, why would they even try introducing this? I mean, if you're going to be racist, be smart, man. At least come up with a good excuse. This doesn't even look that way. And I was listening to the news, because this captures a lot of people's interest, at least up here in Canada. I'm sure everyone down in the U.S. is big on Syria, but that's another topic for another day. But one person on the news program, The National, came up with what was effectively a very wonderful conspiracy idea about this.
Okay.
The Parti Québécois has issued this Charter of Values because they want to lose. They want to force another election to come up right away. Because if they do it now, it will be on this contentious, apparently, according to the polls, 50-50 somewhat divide as to whether this is a good or a bad thing.
So they want to cause strife between...
They want this to be the issue that people are arguing on.
The federal government.
Exactly. Not just the federal government, between all the provincial parties in Quebec. They want this to be the issue. They want this so that they can get about 50% of the votes and maybe tip it over to somewhat into a majority. That's what the issue they want is on. If they do it now, if they do it in the spring when the next potential time comes up for having everyone vote no confidence and force the election, it'll be likely on the economy and the budget, for which they are not doing very good. The Parti Québécois' budget and ability to get jobs started is at best lackluster.
Okay.
So this is a designed to fail thing. This whole thing, all the hullabaloo they're causing, is just for that to cause a no confidence vote and force an election on something they might be able to get a decent amount more votes on.
Okay, I just want to pause for just a second to say, of course, we don't believe this. It's sort of like a possibility.
It's a very interesting concept, and
we're talking about it theoretically as a conspiracy theory.
As a conspiracy theory, but let's face it, with politics, Canadian politics especially, not necessarily out of the realm of probability, let alone possibility.
It's plausible to me, yes.
There have been governments before that set up for it to be an issue. This is the issue. We can work with this. We'll get better votes than if they realize how bad we are at the things we should probably be doing every year. And then once they get the majority, they be in for so many years, and they don't care about whatever it is. They'll ignore the whole thing and try and lead whatever they see fit. Don't cause the contentious issues.
I mean, if you talk, I guess, because this goes around a lot in the States, which for some reason I seem to know more examples from the States, but this is what you hear about the Southern white strategy from the Republicans starting in, 60s or 70s, when it switched. The Republicans used to be more of a liberal or the party that was against slavery and stuff like that.
Well, Lincoln was Republican.
Yeah, and then the civil rights movement or thereabouts, maybe slightly before that, it switched and the Republicans became the party of white people, and they had some racist policies at that point. They were like, okay, we're going to... So I think that's fairly well documented or well known that this was an actual strategy. But at the same time, it's like kind of slimy, kind of like if they really did that, is that I don't know, that sounds quite bad.
It is pretty bad. It is pretty grimy, but politically, it's a smart strategy.
Yeah, go for the majority.
It's it was in like Magic the Gathering, other card games, playing cheap and dirty versus playing a more dignified game.
Yeah.
Although, mind you, what is considered cheap and dirty tends to change every time they get a new block of cards out. So
Yeah. Well, and the thing I always say about racism too is, in the long run, it's not good for you. It's not good for your own soul. Because basically, I think it's Chris Rock had a quote you can't afford to be racist because somebody in your family is going to be a different of the race that you hate. You can't hate anybody because someone in your family is going to be that. And I think that
pretty wise words, especially for someone noted as a comedian.
Yeah, I didn't put it as well as he did, but obviously,
what's his job? Is to put it as eloquently as possible.
Yeah, I guess. Our amateurish job is to put things eloquently. I guess we don't do such a good job. We're learning. We
like to put out things as ideas, fecund for your own thoughts and growths.
Yeah.
Consider us a launching point. That's another way of thinking about it. I believe is a good way.
So it's never. It's sort of. Yes. I guess it's in some people's self-interest to sometimes do play try and get racist votes from people to vote for you because they're racist or something like that. Or and in Canada, it's not necessarily that they're racist, but it might be xenophobia or.
Well, that's the thing. Is one of the things that we're talking about was they had an interviewee of a lady in rural Quebec saying, we have to put this in now, otherwise in 10 years they'll all be making us wear the headscarves because they'll have taken over.
Okay.
That's kind of racist.
It's both racist and xenophobic, I think.
Xeno-racist. Phobic.
Yeah. And of course, in the long run, I say it's in all of our interest to not be racist because we're going to have these people. If we're talking about other races, they're going to be in
all
our families.
cultures will come into the
family. They're going to be
eventually.
our neighbors. They're going to be our friends and the people we talk to, and so
business owners.
Yeah.
Politicians.
Yeah, your customers.
Oh yes, if you own a business, you can definitely not afford to be racist, especially in this economy.
Yeah, and that's the classic example in the South of how people wouldn't serve black people. Like there's no blacks allowed in our establishment, and of course ultimately that's a bad way to do business.
Exactly. But I will note that's what Ontario's basically doing is taking up the slack on that, because they've got an advertisement from a few hospitals now. We don't care what's on your head. We care what's in it.
Do they really?
Yes, they do. And they had the nice image of the lady with the headscarf around her. And so they're basically saying, okay, if you guys are going to try this and say you can't work, in Quebec and have this on, we're going to take your workers because we can, and we're not this kind of people.
That is interesting.
That's good strategy, too.
When you put it that way, it sounds like the policy itself is something that sort of ought to come from a higher level, like it should be the same for the whole country.
It should be, and that's why the federal government is going to take it up if it ever winds up being put in.
And this is why it suddenly becomes this issue of the separatists, is because Quebec, separatists think that, we should have we should be making those rules for Quebec.
But that's the thing. That's why they've decided to choose. The Parti Québécois is choose an issue like this over what you can and cannot wear based on its size, is because the issue of separation is no longer as big as it once was. It was no longer like a 50-50 divide. They're losing members off to other causes, doing other things. They no longer care so much about separating and becoming an independent Quebec as they used to be. And so that instead of, Quebec wants to be free, it's now, we've got to protect their values, and that's how they're trying to get their 50% of the votes in.
Okay. So what?
Which is interesting because they may have a lot of people that will support what is effectively a semi-racist policy, or at least a culturally biased policy, I suppose is an interesting way to term it. Even if they don't believe it themselves, they're just using it to launch themselves into power. Which is an interesting thing when you think about it. I'm not really racist. I'm just using it as a political tactic to get votes.
Yeah, I don't know. I suspect it's the case with the particular people who might push this, is they probably don't think about it too much. They probably think, oh well, I'm not really racist, but I don't I don't know any black people or Jewish people or Muslim people for that matter. So they just go about their lives.
Well, the thing is, I've been looking at a lot of Canadian politics, and there's a lot of things that are specific. They look like incidents, little bits here and there, but are specifically orchestrated to bring about an issue they can talk about. Like Justin Trudeau's initial slip about, yes, I've smoked marijuana before, and then it's like, yes, I think we should decriminalize marijuana. He brings the issue to him on this. It's not like someone blindsides him with a question on pot. No, he opens up the question himself. He starts the conversation. All of a sudden, he's determining what's being said, in which order, and what his side is. He's orchestrating it himself, which is a very good tactic, something I believe he probably picked up from his dad.
Could be, although, it's funny, you hear every politician does get asked about pot, at one point or another.
Well, especially these days. I mean, since he slipped out on it, there's been a lot of people asking a lot of politicians.
Yeah, but, Stephen Harper, he was asked this time, and he's been asked before, too. And every time his answer is basically the same. It's like, ha, 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 funny question. No, I've never smoked pot. I don't think Canadians want that, and I think it's a bad idea or whatever, and that's the end of that. Right?
So could we sign up like a petition for him? Could we get him to try pot just to get him to flex a little bit? Honestly, that guy's spine sometimes looks like it's made out of a steel rod. He just does not bend.
It could be. I don't know. It's hard to say.
If he does have a back issue and I'm being insensitive about that, I'm incredibly sorry. He just looks like he has a metal spine. It's just really unyielding.
I think personally, I don't know, but I guess I've seen him on Rick Mercer and whatever. I don't think he's that, stiff a guy. I think he's fun to be with his family and stuff.
In front of the cameras, he's got to relax a little bit, though.
It's one style of leadership, I think, is to be cool and, not cool,
the
but...
hip to be square sort of thing?
Let me see, what's the word? I guess, in a sense, it's cool because it's, non-reactive, but it's also
play it
rigid,
easy, play it sparse,
rigid and non-reactive, something like that. Yeah.
But yes, that's another thing for another day. Is talking about whether or not that's a manufactured persona for a conspiracy notion.
I think every politician in this level like that has to have some kind of manufacturing.
But how much of it is the mask of the politician versus how much
How
is the
much?
real person? I think Justin Trudeau is showing his flaws, is making it much less of a mask, much more of a suit than a mask.
More of a suit.
It's just a role he puts on when he goes into the office,
yeah.
sort of thing, as opposed to facing the world. I am this guy, and really you're not really. No.
I don't know what sort of real person he was. I imagine he's fairly normal. I don't like.
Well, as normal as any Canadian politician.
Yeah.
We get some weirdos every once in a while. Google Amor de Cosmos. It's a nice start.
There we go.
But yes, that was the conspiracy thought, is setting up intentional failure on an issue that's equally divided to get more of the votes than you would otherwise get on issues where you're not well favored.
Yeah, very good.
Take the fight on your terms, sort of thing. It's you can almost look at it almost as like some of the old martial arts styles. You don't go rushing into the other person's fight. You make them come to you for the fight, and you dictate the terms and conditions on how the fight goes. That's how you win a fight.
Well, or like chess, it's like sacrificing one of your pieces to get a
Sacrifice a pawn to
position.
take a knight, sort of thing.
Well, I was going to say pawn, but I don't think pawn is big enough.
There are political pawns in the whole thing.
I think bishop might work because of the religious sort of connotations. Sacrificing a bishop.
To take the king?
Because, yeah.
Fair enough. But it's just a very interesting concept, and I think it's as good a conspiracy notion for this week as any. Intentional failure. Failure by design.
Cool. Okay. Well, conspiracy. Yeah.
Yes, we do have an actual main topic this week.
Well, yeah, main topic.
And that's on the two things I watched this week and how they adapted them.
So adaptations?
Yes, the Phantom of the Opera started off, not exactly as a modern play. And I'm sure everyone's seen enough parodies or at least moments of it to know a little bit about this and that. You might not know who the Phantom of the Opera was. I learned that. Whee! That's my extra bit of knowledge.
Is that a spoiler? Or?
Not really. It's given away by the end of the first act, I suppose.
Okay.
But I won't spoil it for you or anything.
Okay. All right. I haven't actually seen it.
Well, it's one of those things, like, it's like a Trivial Pursuit question. Who was the Scarlet Pimpernel? Or what is the name of the Phantom of the Opera? That's something that gets you a point.
So we're not going to help her.
Well,
we're going to help those people out.
It's like at worst an hour and a half sort of movie. I mean, just
or
find a copy. It's probably somewhere on Netflix. It's an old Universal film.
Yeah.
They should have it up on there. It's a good thing. But I found it to be a wonderful adaptation. The music was great, really deep. They got good singers for it too, not just like a guy who can act and then they taught him how to sing. They got real professional quality singers because it's at the Paris Opera House. You don't just get a bunch of second-rate singers. Nobody believes it then. It totally breaks the scene.
Oh, speaking of singing,
yes.
I've been watching The X Factor.
That's it.
I don't know if that's simulation related. I guess it's sort of...
It's reality TV, which is
yes,
artificial as almost anything else.
It falls in our purview. But anyway, that's another topic for another day, I guess.
So as a quick aside then, what do you think of The X Factor? Is it a good thing? Is it an annoying thing?
I was entertained. Yeah. And I always, one of the things I look for and am annoyed by reality TV shows is that they will build up and build up and build up and give you a fairly short, singing clip. And be like, oh, they sang, and then sort of repeat and repeat, and then, it's commercials now. But this was, I got a fair amount of content out of it. I was entertained. And
to be fair, though, Mythbusters doesn't do that. Mythbusters always delivers.
Yeah, that's true.
That's technically under the reality television blanket. So.
Yeah, and I really I don't know what the ratio of good singers to bad singers was, but I was I kept on, it's really fun to guess because they show the story first. It's here's the person, here's their parents, and
I've been trying for 14 years. I've been singing every night out on the balcony.
And you can get little clues. If they're a bit older, then Simon will say, well, where have you been the last, why haven't you been singing? So you get that little...
I got a job to hold down, buddy. Anything on pursue the arts, just willy-nilly.
Yeah, exactly. So if the old ones, you're I bet they can't sing very good. And sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. And I think more often you're right with the older singers. It's like if you haven't sort of found a niche by now, there's probably a reason for that.
I don't know, man. Leonard Cohen's not exactly a spring chicken, and his voice is magnificent.
No, but the point is he's
been trained for decades.
Yeah,
sort of thing. But yeah,
when he was young, he got into it, but the thing is with X Factor is you never know because they find people like
someone's been singing in the church choir for 20 years. That's how they got their chops. They just never aspired to anything.
Susan Boyle, or I think was her name.
I prefer Paul Potts myself. My
Paul Potts,
goodness, the crowd reaction on his first song alone was better than 2 Disney movies.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying about the guessing game that you play before, like you're guessing.
So you're playing the meta game on it. You're not just watching it. You're playing like the non-drinking game.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, it's like, okay, I think that this person is going to be a bad singer, and then they're really good. It's like, oh wow, okay.
Take a shot.
I didn't do very well. I didn't keep track of my score, but I felt like I was guessing them wrong more often than I was guessing them right.
Oh. Well, that's the weird thing about musical talent is you can never tell just by looking at a person who's got it, who doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a lot like bad cholesterol levels that way.
Interesting.
You can never tell just by looking who's got it, who doesn't.
And so I guess what made me think of that was the thought about the good songs and the good singers and the difference between a good and a bad singer. So I like hearing that about. Now, the one you were watching, is it opera style, or is it just called Phantom of the Opera as a musical?
Well, it has the songs for the plays that they were doing in there, and it is an opera song, all operatic.
Mm-hmm. But it has like speaking too.
Oh yes. It's not just all on like as an opera itself, because the Phantom of the Opera is not itself inherently just a pure opera.
Right.
It's a play.
It's a play, which I mean, so it's technically it's not an opera, but it's.
But they do operas within the play, so it has at least a semi-operatic quality.
Okay, yeah.
But I quite liked it. It was good. The music was great. I actually felt the female lead, how everyone loves her, was fairly believable.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting variation. Usually it's like 2 men vying for the love of the lady. In this case, it was 3. Mm-hmm. This lady is beloved by freaking everyone. Yeah. And not just because she's a beautiful lady. She actually does have decent singing, ability. Or at least, she's training on it. And I won't give away too many spoilers as to how good she is when the time finally comes. But yeah, I believe the characters. I really saw a lot of pathos and emotion within their facial expressions, which is not something you see a lot of in more modern movies. You'll see close-up shots of like stuff like anger or like looking back and forth, shifty-eyed. You don't see the close-up of a heart breaking. You don't see that often.
Okay.
And that's what really caught me about the movie and really kept my interest in, because the older movies, it tends to be almost like a reality show. A lot of build-up, and the payoff only happens at the end. This one, I was interested in the characters enough to keep me going through the entire way, even when it was going from scene to scene and showing more character-based rather than action-based scenes. And so that was nice. And then I watched the Hunchback of Notre Dame from the wonderful book from Victor Hugo. Yeah, Victor Hugo.
Yeah, is it also a play, or just started off as a novel?
I believe it was a book, and then they've adapted it to pretty much everything
since.
Okay.
And,
it really strikes a chord as to what makes a monster and what makes a man, as they say in one of the songs towards the end.
Yeah.
And for me, it was almost like watching 2 movies edited together, because you could see which scenes were taken from the movie. And by the way, the backgrounds on this, they actually made sure to get all the nice proper background shots and digitally animate it all up, so that when he's going around the Cathedral of Notre Dame, he's going around the Cathedral of Notre Dame. They did not just make this part up.
Okay, so that's
the outdoor stuff, the scenes from the other, beautifully done. If you want to effectively see it, I recommend it just for that.
Right.
So you could see that part, like what came from the story, and then you could see what Disney added in. The 3 talking gargoyles that, make slapstick comments. One of which is Victor, one of which is Hugo, and then one of which constantly gets birds landing on her.
Okay.
And so I love Jason Alexander, and he makes for a good, wacky sidekick kind of voice. You could tell, though, you could edit the whole thing out, and it would have been very good that way. without it.
Well,
it would have been more dramatic.
Good for you as an adult and somebody who sort of has a bit of a background and can say, oh, that's like, looks like it's really Paris or something like that.
Well, here's the thing. I believe we both at a young age saw The Never-Ending Story.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of slapstick characters there just tacked on. The horse wasn't add there for like an animal pet beside the person. The horse was a character. The horse had a role.
Okay.
Whereas Esmeralda's goat or Phoebus's horse, they were clearly animal sidekicks.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying that they were, let me see.
Pandering to a younger audience?
I think that's the idea. And the problem is, like, yes, I think you can make things in a movie that are funny for kids and will keep kids interesting. But sometimes if you're trying that and you fail, like maybe these gargoyles weren't even that.
I'm still not certain what the gargoyles were supposed to do. I mean, you could have had it very interestingly done wherein Quasimodo is so alone, he imagines the gargoyles talking to him, and that's the only way he gets
the premise, right?
That's the thing, no one else ever saw the move, and that's what it kind of very lightly alluded to, but no, they were actually able to cause physical effects upon the world. So it was, otherwise implied that they actually do move and talk and crack wise, and occasionally eat rocks and spit them out like a machine gun.
Well, it's sort of, in the Disney world, like, magic is real, right? So, I don't know.
But that's the thing, it's the Phantom of the Opera, it's the Hunchback of Notre Dame. The magic isn't there if the novel doesn't say it's there. If you're going to adapt from the novel, don't try to add in magic into something that's very harsh and real.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
That's it. I was okay with some of the changes they made.
Okay.
In the original novel, Esmeralda was 14, which, back when it was written, was an acceptable age to begin, like falling in love or lust or whatever with for a lady's age. Mm-hmm. That was how it was done back then.
They get married at that age.
Yeah, you get married and you'd have these wildly varying age differences, like a 40-year-old and a 14-year-old. Creepy as heck now, but that's the way things were back then, and I don't like to make judgment calls on several centuries behind us.
Well, what century was this movie set in?
I think it was the 1800s at the very latest.
1800s, so maybe 200 years ago.
It was pretty far back, though. It was a Candle Age sort of thing, so... as like I said, I don't like to make judgment calls, but for the purposes of storytelling, to a modern audience, it avoids having the issue just by aging Esmeralda up to something where we don't look and go, wow, that's really creepy, and you get totally thrown out.
Okay, yeah. Well, to take another Disney example, though, wasn't The Little Mermaid basically a teenager?
I think she was pretty young. Well, that's the thing, though.
But I think the prince could have been 20 or 18 or something.
But the thing is that she's a fictional race, so that does change things a little bit.
Oh, I see. It does it? Okay. No, sure. Why not?
I mean, heck, if dogs reach proper age of maturity by 2 years, who's to say mermaids don't by 10?
Oh, that's true. The dogs in 101 Dalmatians, like I bet, the
3 years down the road, yeah. Is all of them would be of a proper breeding age.
That's a good sequel. I think they did a sequel to 101 Dalmatians.
Let's see, 2 dogs produce up to 101, so that's 99 dogs per... No, it wasn't actually there, no, but you could, within the span of about 10 years, get 101 Dalmatians just through standard breeding techniques.
Yeah, imagine if that was a genetic change that all of the offspring also had. Then those dogs would overrun the entire earth.
And that's why Cruella de Vil was really the hero of the story. No, it wasn't just those, one, female dog. Because I won't use the proper term for a female dog here. We're keeping this clean. But she didn't actually have 99 puppies.
Technically, we're allowed to say bitch if we're actually talking about a bitch.
Oh, okay. We're allowed to use, yes.
Harp on it,
but so she didn't actually have 99 puppies. It was like they rescued it from other things. Watch the they did a live action one recently, didn't they? Like 7 years ago.
Yeah, I think there was one.
Watch the classic Disney cartoon.
She didn't have them all. She just had.
Yeah, watch the classic Disney cartoon. It's actually pretty nice that way. classic animation style, good to watch, good to study, you know.
But don't you prefer the genetic abnormality where she literally has 99? Wouldn't that be a better story?
I would entertain that for one of those sci-fi movies of the week. You get the Dogopocalypse, where they just breed too much and then they go feral, and you've got all these tens of thousands of wild dogs running down the streets, eating anything they can because they're starving.
Coming soon to video cassette, 101 Xenomorphs.
Yeah, it's basically what they wind up becoming, whether or not they have a creepy carapace or not. That's just... Ugh. But, okay, yes, for the Phantom of the Opera and all that, the musical score was used as it advanced the plot. The singing of the main actress and her proficiency was a major plot point.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who became the Phantom of the Opera, he was paying, secretly on the sly, paying for her lessons. She thought she was getting it because the guy was interested in her voice. No, he's getting money on the side from this guy, and that's how she's training up her voice. So it becomes a legitimate plot point, whereas in the Disney Hunchback of Notre Dame, it's the standard Disney, I'm expressing my emotions now sort of thing.
Okay, yeah.
But I gotta say, the music in the Hunchback of Notre Dame was magnificent as well. Mm-hmm. Not the pop style like you have with Aladdin, but it fit for the theme because they were much deeper, much more like you'd hear a choir singing this sort of song. So, for all the fuss and the hatred people gave it when it was out in the theaters, how far away it was from the the book, how dare they? The music was amazingly well done and kept to the style, circulating around what would be life in France, especially around the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Okay, so we're talking about Hunchback of Notre Dame again.
Yes, going back and forth and looking at the comparisons.
Yeah.
But there was, to the best of my knowledge, no actual singing within the book. But it was forgivable because it was just magnificently done, just deep. Tony J did the voice of the bad guy in any circumstance where Tony J winds up doing a song. That gets a nice green check mark in my book.
Yeah, that sounds good. I guess, that's a point that you should keep in mind, I guess, I don't know, when you're writing or even before pre-writing, it's deciding on a genre because certain genres of musical will have the singing sort of built in as almost acknowledging that we're doing a song now, and others it'll be well, it's just sort of part of the story. It's almost
it's a background interlude between scenes.
Yeah, sometimes it feels just like an interlude. It's now somebody's going to sing a song. Okay, well, back to your story in a minute here.
Quasimodo's heart is now being broken here, and he shall sing about it, and then we go into the next scene.
Yeah, and that's weird because that's definitely storytelling. That's clearly... Because you get some genres where it's no, here's the camera is recording an actual thing that actually happened. Of course, it's not, none of it's real, but sort of time sort of goes in a linear way. But then, you get musicals where it's okay, and then time pauses.
They kind of break themselves out of conventional reality. Yeah. As I suppose the singing could be seen as an external form of their inner monologue. Rather than them just walking up into the center stage and having this wonderful, paragraph about how deep they are feeling hurt and how betrayed they are. No, they sing about it, and that gets the message across. And, it was the kind of nice song, you'll remember it later on.
Yeah, exactly. And in some TV shows, they do this every once in a while. I remember House did, they broke out into song, and he was, on a stage, and it was a burlesque show. With the dancing girls and he had a cane and a tuxedo and everything, and he's dancing around, and I think it turned out to be a hallucination or whatever or something.
Probably.
But the thing is, sometimes you see that. You see, they deliberately burst out into a very stage-like, atmosphere, and there's lights, and there's dancers in, full costumes. And
I think it's because when you do a song and dance or thing, it's an allowance on the part of the audience. Yeah. You can move out of the reality within the setting, and you can do things that otherwise wouldn't be allowed. And the audience just go, God, I can't believe you just totally broke my suspension of disbelief. It's like, no, now it's a song.
Yeah.
And then you can do things that are otherwise, not normally allowed by the genre and get away with it.
And I guess that can work or not work. Generally, whenever I see it, audiences are like, yes, this is great. I'm having so much fun because, I don't know, I was bored watching two people talk to each other. I mean, weird as that is, because you'd think they would want to be.
Isn't that why they sat down to watch the story? Yeah.
But it's like, oh no, here's a great interruption that I'm very happy I got to see. So it works.
That's it. I was watching the two movies, and I had the same sort of thought occurring within both when the music came on.
Mm-hmm.
In that, wonder if I can apply this to like other genres. Like, if say Snoop Dogg was to sit down and watch, Phantom of the Opera, would he say this is pretty good? But the opera's kind of old stuff. I wish they had more modern music. Well, what I liked about the Phantom of the Opera was that they were singing in French, not in like Italian. I know just a wee bit of French, so I was like, oh, I kind of get what they're singing about here. Besides their body motions.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of, oh yeah, I'm into it. I like this opera better than I like most operas, even though this is a fake opera I'm watching. And it became like, well, what if they were to sing in like English? I could understand the entire plot. I could watch an entire opera if it was in English.
Yeah.
But who else would want to watch it? I'd have to watch an entire opera alone. It'd have to be made just for me, because not a lot of people like an English opera.
Well, there's rock operas.
There is that, and that's what they do. They changed it from a standard, opera to rock music. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me, you could tell almost any story, effectively make it a musical, and set it on a stage-like production. You could do this with any genre of music.
Mm-hmm.
It's just technically an untapped potential market.
Yeah. Well, you need singers. Because I think...
Oh, yes, definitely. You can't make it on secondhand singers and just a lot of auto-tune.
Yeah. I think you can get away with bad actors.
Ooh, actually, you could probably make it with a decent amount of auto-tune, and then you could have the story be against, like, natural singers versus the auto-tuners. And then be like kind of like a West Side Story sort of thing. The naturals versus the synths.
Oh, my. Yeah.
I would watch the heck out of that one. You could have a lot of fun with that. But, you could work it out. I mean... everyone, I'm pretty sure, has seen at least one musical in their time. Mm-hmm. And so it works, but I'd like to see it set up on like a stage, too, instead of like, oh, this is all like he's singing in the real world. I want to see this whole as like a stage production where they wind up, we'll say a hip-hop thing goes on there, and all their songs are done in a hip-hop style.
Okay.
You can go gangster rap if you want to go that way. I'm sure there's a lot of stories you can tell.
I should do a Google search and find out and maybe post in the show notes because there probably is someone who's done something like a
but it's not exactly hit the same sort of thing as the opera has. Mm-hmm. Primarily because TV has usurped the role. Now that there's TV, you don't need to go to a place to watch, a play or see like a story. You sit down on TV, you got 500 channels to choose from, man. Go for it. Mm-hmm. There's a story somewhere.
It's funny, too, when you mention gangster rap, for example, it makes me think, like, in the actual story, sort of in the real world when those things happen, it has its own kind of soundtrack because people are listening to other music. Like, if they're doing a drive-by shooting or whatever, just for example, they might have music blaring in the car, or they might turn it off or whatever. I don't know how you should.
I would assume you should probably turn it off unless you're just going for like a spray of fire, because you want to aim, right?
Yeah, but does sound really disrupt your aim?
I know a lot of people who turn down the volume when they're looking for the right house address.
I guess it can affect your concentration. Yeah.
If they turn it down just to find the right numbers on the side of a house, then they should probably turn it down to spray the enemy with bullets. Mm-hmm. Not that we endorse that, but
Yeah.
It just seems
a drive-by shooting.
It seems makes a logical sense. You want to keep focus on.
But no, this is what we do in the Simulationist: is we figure out how to do things so we can tell stories about them.
Exactly.
And what happens,
but you could just write a paragraph about how they sprayed bullets out the window and drove off.
Yeah.
Or if you're musically inclined, you could have them, pause, get out the car, sing about how their hatred, sing it out, pop a cap in an ass, hop in the car, and drive off.
You could use the guns as, like...
microphones.
Because going to say that it's percussion instruments. No. A microphone, I don't know if that's a good idea. Use the butt, I guess, as a microphone.
I think percussion makes a better sense, but microphone is just right there, you know. You do the gangsta style where you twist your hand on the side, and then the handle becomes the microphone.
The microphone, yeah. Or get like a gadget that's a dual, like a gun with a built-in microphone.
That's not bad. I could dig that. But yeah, you can do that for almost any genres. Make it effectively a musical, and then if you provide the right stage thing, it technically becomes that opera. You could make a country opera.
Yeah.
Story in the Wild West. They've done country musicals before. You put it on a stage rather than do an outdoor set, and bam, it becomes the opera.
Yeah. Well, isn't there? What is the Grand Ole Opry? What is that? That's something.
It is like that. They have the singers come up on there, but they don't make like an operatic play out of this. Okay. Boy, if they did though, they'd probably get a lot more viewers. Like this week, we've got Shania Twain's new album on, and we're gonna string all the songs together to form a storyline. And then, yeah, I would pay more attention to the Grand Ole Opry if they were doing that.
Yeah. So yeah, I was thinking too, like sort of a lot of things in life happen where there's music and there's too much. Like things will happen in a busy club or something like that. People have a meeting, and it doesn't exactly make for good film material if the music is sort of out of sync. Like there's music going on, but it's not related to the conversation, or it's only tangentially. It's like, oh yeah, we're playing the top 40 in the background,
and that's why in the second Ninja Turtles movie I forgave the whole ninja rap thing.
Yeah.
They bust into a nightclub, and then the nightclub people decide to make the conscious choice to change the music and start up, thanks to Vanilla Ice, the ninja rap music movement. And so yeah, they're singing about the Ninja Turtles as they're doing their stunts, as they actually fight and do their stunts. And so I found the movie acceptable for that alone, because it was an interesting change of style than what you usually see for a club scene.
Okay, yes.
Even if it was a bunch of people in costumes fighting one another.
So that's how you approach that sort of the disconnect when it's hard to make a film with background music, because
you suddenly have the DJ wind up being like it would be the producer insert character. He sees what's going on. He changes what's going for the music to match the scene, because he's that proficient a DJ.
And the thing about going back to Notre Dame is in a church like that, or I believe in Notre Dame, they have performances, like I don't know if it's weekly or whatever. They have choirs and people who sing. So anybody who's been there, who's actually been to the place, associates with this wonderful singing, this beautiful, heavenly singing.
And even if you never even go inside, the bells themselves can be considered wonderful music all their own.
Oh yeah, well sure, that's a big part.
Quasimodo was the bell ringer. That's where he got the upper body strength from.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where we got the term dumbbells from.
Yeah.
They don't make any sound. They're mute. They're dumb bells. And that's what they were originally using to determine why some of these monks were really freaking buff on the top half. They were the bell ringers.
And I imagine if there are real movies, I don't know if Notre Dame allows movies to be filmed in or near it, but I imagine like the filmmakers have to be, like, they can't be filming while the bells are ringing, because that would be like, what are you saying? I can't hear you over the bells.
Well, that would likely be the thing. They'd have to time it so that if the bells are ringing, they get a sample of that. Then they do like a post, recording soundtrack laydown.
Edit them in, yeah.
And then just cycle one to the background, one to the foreground, and hopefully get the volumes correct, because otherwise it becomes a horrible scene in a movie.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, you could make that as a very interesting scene in a movie where nobody can hear what they, is like. You as the audience can't hear what they're saying because the bells are going on, and that's when the secret information is revealed. It beats I have an idea. Whisper, 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 whisper. It's like, no. Here, let me extol my plan, and then ding, dong, ding, dong.
I think I remember a scene like that from, what's the movie that's British and about the criminals, and
the British love their criminals.
The guy who's like a pugilist. Is it Brad Pitt, I think?
Wait, you're not... No, wait, that's the Irish one I was thinking of with...
Yeah, he's Irish, or...
No, I was thinking of the one with Tom Cruise.
Oh, no, okay.
Where he does a lot of boxing in that one.
What is the one? It's not Hot Fuzz, because that's a different movie.
Is it a modern one or?
Yeah, fairly recent.
Oh, then I haven't seen it.
I don't know, 10 years. I can't remember it now. I'll put it in.
Edit
if I
out.
think of it. Yeah.
But yeah, you can do a lot of fun stuff with that as being not just music in the background, but being music as it exists within the reality of the setting.
Yeah, it's probably harder to do, but probably more
I think
rewarding.
the payoff is bigger for it. Yes, I do know the musical and the verbal accoutrements for the movie Kung Fu Hustle played in very well. The Tiger's Roar as being played through a microphone type system. In this case, a bell with the top chopped off to make it a microphone.
Yeah.
That worked out as an actual thing. It had extra power that way.
That was a fun movie. Yeah.
It was a very fun movie.
What do you think of the music from Star Wars? Like that kind of cinematic.
The Imperial March?
Well, it's cinematic, but it's like it isn't anywhere in the film. Like the characters are like, I hear Darth Vader's theme. He must be near.
The Imperial March starts.
She recognized his
They're coming.
stench, but I don't know. Do you think that's? I mean, I guess it works.
I like that. I always find that good, especially when it's the classical orchestral stuff, because Lord knows none of the music happened in Conan, except for the stuff that happened in the market in the background.
Yeah, because he's like in the wilderness. It's like, where is this like music coming from?
Well, that's the thing is when he's pushing the giant grist mill around in circles, he's really playing just a giant, like a cassette tape at the time, and that's what's playing the music.
I was gonna go somewhere like a turntable, but
no, I'm taking it really old school, man. He's playing himself a giant cassette tape. He's the piece that maneuvers the whole thing around.
Did you ever hear about that? I think it was debunked, but they said they had a potter's wheel, and they had like a bit of straw or something that was like hanging against it, so it was like implanting tiny, barely perceptible grooves, and that the wheel was making an urn of some kind, like a spinning.
Oh,
around.
it wound up making sound.
And then they said, and I don't think it turned out to be true. Unfortunately, it'd be really cool if it was, but they said that it had recorded the voices of the people in the room at the time.
That would have required a lot more than just straw.
I think so, yeah, and I think it was, it's too bad, but it's such a cool idea, though.
Well, the technology has technically been around for a lot longer than when it was all assembled together. So it could have been done a lot earlier. Those of you going in the alternative history stuff can have some fun as to figuring out how far back they could have made the phonograph.
Yeah. Well, I like thinking about that, too, because technically everything we have in our modern world, all it takes is the idea. I mean, the materials are,
the steam train could have been invented by the Egyptians.
There's metal in the ground, just ready for, to be made. And they were making swords and stuff out of metal, so they obviously had it. But I suppose one of the things you need with steam trains is a big enough population to be like, we're working on this. We're making a train track from this city to this city. They had
to build the pyramids. You'd think figuring a nice, easy way to haul the rock from A to B would have been just on top of somebody's list. Probably the people hauling the rock when they're done at the end of the day.
Yeah. I wonder if they have the sort of the freedom to be like, excuse me, Mr. Pharaoh, I think I have a better way of doing this.
Mr. Imhotep, I've got a question. Can you find an easier way for us to haul these rocks?
No, whip.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know if it would be that way, because sometimes I think they would have to be. There definitely were sophisticated people working on the pyramid, so somebody had to be thinking.
But for the longest time, the concept of what you can do with steam was just like a child's toy. It was like
exactly.
An egg with some vents off to the side. You fill the top up with water. You put a coal in the bottom. The coal heats the water, causing the steam to jet out of the side, and it spins around as you hang it from like the ceiling. And that was fun for kids. Ha 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 ha. And then nobody thought, you know what? There's power there. Can we make that work for us?
Yeah, well, this is why I think that it might be that the population has to be a certain size, because there has to be a demand to get goods from a city to another city, and like.
But they were working for thousands of years on getting goods from A to B, and they figured, rivers, that'll be the easiest way. We'll just follow the river.
Yeah, and rivers were cheap. I mean, a boat costs so much money to build, and not money, but time.
Of course, it takes a little bit longer to go upstream than it does to go downstream.
Yeah, but they figured out ways to do that. And they can sail up certain rivers. They can just sail.
When the weather's right. If the weather's not right, it's kind of grab a stick and start pushing.
Yeah. And, well, I guess the thing about these voyages, too, like way back in the day, is like a trader would be gone from home for 2, 3, 10 years. Well, how long did the Argonauts...
They spent like decades out, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, like,
pretty harsh.
I suppose more typical trader be away from home for 2 to 3 years.
I know the the Silk Road and the Spice Road that they had there took years to complete.
Yeah.
So it was as much a lifelong profession as it was a job.
I guess, and it basically almost makes you a semi-nomad because this is your lifestyle. You're on the road, then you set up camp.
And yet nobody perceived them in the same group as they did the gypsy peoples.
That's interesting, yeah.
All a bunch of PR. You come in with silk, everyone loves you.
Yeah.
You come in with a violin, they assume you're a riffraff.
I think we might be talking about different Oh no, I guess they would both
Not
be
that far off.
Yeah, but wouldn't gypsies also have used the Silk Road? Wouldn't they have?
They were going all sorts of
too?
areas. The Silk Road was mainly a Euro-Asian connection.
Like a connection between Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, mostly
So
through Asia.
the gypsies were going every which way whenever they felt kind of like it. And, not so much a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out if they had just started doing some, trade dealings, maybe the things would have been a little different.
To an extent they did. That's sort of what they lived on. So they were kind of like mini traders.
But if they had made that like the main focus, no, man, I'm a new kind of gypsy here. I'm a trader, man. I'm here to get you the exotic spices and the wonderful clothings. By the bolt, you actually got some assembly required on your cloth pants, man.
I wonder, that might be why they were like, I don't know, despised, is because there was the potential because traders often got quite wealthy by doing all this. So there's the potential for gypsies to do quite well wherever they went, and show up with nothing, and then somehow shoot through the social ladder simply by trading, because that's so powerful an idea of trade that you can make yourself rich.
On the other hand, they were considered one of the others. It's like there's us and then there's the others.
Yeah.
And so maybe it was just we don't have TV yet. Let's discriminate them. They look different, and that's something to do until the next feast day comes around.
Well, and the other thing, I guess, if you're living in a peasant village in medieval Europe, you don't have a lot of education, and the gypsies might be the first others you've ever encountered, like because nobody else was traveling in it. There might be some people that you hate in the next valley, but you don't see them too often because they live in the next valley and they don't move.
And if you don't keep your farm up there, you're going to starve. So you don't get a lot of opportunity to go, next valley and start, hating people actively. It's just got to be a passive thing. The gypsies, they came to you, man. You could hate them actively, man. That was so thoughtful of them to come to you.
Yeah. Well, and this is something we often see in our role-playing games in, like, D&D and stuff. Is like, the adventurers come traipsing into town, and the townsfolk are like, we don't like strangers.
Mostly because a lot of PCs don't bother to peace bond any of their weapons.
Exactly.
How would you like it if 4 heavily armed people came into your town?
How would I like that? Well, soldiers come into, like, Canadian soldiers.
Mind you, the modern soldier is a lot different than the medieval soldier. The medieval soldier was more of a mercenary sort of thing.
You don't see them walking the streets with weapons. Sometimes you see like the cars and stuff. Do they drive by your place ever?
Every once in a while, but at least if they're going by the street in a group, they'll do something like a march. So at least professional. You just see 4 people with a lot of weapons walking down the street.
Like from the Mad Max movie or something.
Yeah, boy, that's something else entirely. You consider crossing the street or hiding. You don't consider like, I'll try and trade with them.
I'll tell you a little story too. When I was younger and I didn't know anything about D&D or role playing or whatever, a group of LARPers came and I lived next to Mount Doug Park, which is a fairly large empty park. Like there's just some trails and there's a mountain you can go up to. But there was a group of LARPers who came in to play with swords and whatever. So they were like next door basically, because the park is next door to the house. Mm-hmm. Although the park doesn't have doors. But anyways, so we called the police on them because they were like young kids. Well, not young, but I guess late teens, early 20s, kind of, that crowd.
Well, if they're still playing around with swords and they don't have like
Playing
a
with
permit or
swords.
anything set up, then yeah.
Well,
You're in
I
your
didn't,
right to do so.
Personally, I never followed up on what happened with the police, but I remember us, I think it was me and it might have been my parents who actually made the call, but basically we were like, yeah, we're calling the police because there's kids with swords and weaponry and stuff hanging around in the park. Like, that's not cool. But now I would look at them and be like, LARPers. Imagine if they weren't LARPers. Imagine if they were like really thugs and stuff. Like, oh.
That's right, we're bringing it back old school. Guns are for wimps. We're going with the claymore.
And then me today, I'd be like, oh, look, LARPers. And I'd like walk up to them, hey, LARPers, what are you doing? What do you mean, LARPers?
Hail and well met, fair adventurer. No, wait, they're thugs.
You guys aren't LARPers at all.
I cast invisibility.
It's like, my hands are crossed. Can't you see? On my chest, you can't see me.
Ooh, yeah, I could set up for a very interesting, grim situation.
I don't know. I want to see a show like that now.
I think there might be one or two stuff set out there somewhere.
Yeah.
That sounds like something they'd have put in for a scene somewhere. But yes, by and large, though, if I will go back onto the main topic.
Yes, okay.
I found there was a lot more love for the Phantom of the Opera than there was for the Hunchback of Notre Dame, even though from what I learned about the Phantom of the Opera, it started off as one of those Abbott and Costello movies.
Really?
When they were writing off, it was going to be Abbott and Costello, meet the Phantom of the Opera. And then apparently they either couldn't get them or they realized, no, this works really nice on its own and we got good singers. Let's just play it straight.
So, okay, it's not comedic at all.
Well,
are
that's
there
the thing
moments,
I mean, you can see comedy in some situations. When the guy goes insane, and finally becomes a villain, it's when they misplace his musical manuscript, can't find it, and then he hears them playing it, and he assumes that they've stolen his music. So he goes into a frenzy. You could see a dark humor in that, but it wasn't played for humor.
Okay, yeah.
It was at least one person wound up dead, one person wound up horribly scarred for life.
Hey.
So,
that's not funny.
Pretty darn grim. But it just seems as though it was played with more affection for the role. Like, everyone treated it with respect. Like, okay, we're doing a classic work here of theater and writing, so we're going to make sure we all give a top-notch performance.
Did he seem, I guess the emotion would be like maybe paranoia or...
quick paranoia and straight into madness. Because apparently back then, musicians were not always treated with high regard, and yes, their music was stolen from time to time.
Yep, yeah.
So he went into the guy who was lost the manuscript was being a bit of a dick. So his death was not exactly called for, but a little strangulation was maybe not out of the question. He just took it too far. He brushed the guy off for an entire day so he could play goosey around with his assistant, and instead of actually doing his damn job. So a smack or two would not be out of the question, but strangled to death, that's a little bit too much.
It's funny because I'm picturing people I've worked with that could get pushed over the edge that way.
And that's what makes it all the more believable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a few jokes made in there, like when the guy becomes the Phantom and he steals himself away in the 2,500 rooms of the Paris Opera House. He gets a master key. He can get anywhere. And he winds up stealing some food because dude's got to eat. He's a Phantom in name only. He does need to eat. He's a living human being.
Sure.
And the one guy, says, oh, he stole like a jar of pickled pig's feet. Well, probably die from that. So, that was the nature of the character. He's all this kind of flippant and all that. So he was the only kind of comedic relief I suppose they had there.
Okay.
But you go over to the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and there was at least one character that was pretty much just there for laughs. The animal sidekicks were there for jokes. And then you got the talking gargoyle that had the hots for the goat. And so that didn't seem like it was treated with the same amount of respect. It was clearly shown to be something like, okay, we're going to target this for a younger audience. We're going to make this a little easier. We're going to stop the bad ending.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this and that. It's like, well, why didn't you just make your own story?
Sure. Well, let me ask you, like, do you think it could have been done, like, the funny stuff could have been kept, like, there could have been funny stuff that was done better and wouldn't have felt odd? Or do you think the mistake was in adding anything comedic at all?
I think they could have shown Quasimodo's mental oddity for his state by having the gargoyles act around him, talk around him. Only he sees it. And so then the wacky, kind of, oh, I'm all, haha, comedic sidekick sort of thing, gets a very interesting tone when it's really just a product of his own imagination and loneliness.
That'd be interesting.
You could even work at that. He watches the people down, like, living their life around. They could have done it so that the personalities of the people down there that he watches and observes are mirrored by the personalities of the gargoyles around him. That could have been really deeply done, and then people would have considered it. Yeah, people could have considered, like, oh, he's really projecting what he wants. These aren't really talking gargoyles.
That didn't happen in the show? Like I thought there was a moment.
There was talking gargoyles, definitely.
But they weren't like
they weren't the
guy
projected
selling meat in the market wasn't
they
Jason
weren't
Alexander.
They weren't directly the projected consciousness of what he's seeing. They're considered their own characters, even if they're of similar type to some of the people he sees, in the market square.
Okay, but that was something that sort of was in the movie a bit.
You could make a parallel for it, but it was very weakly established. If they had tried for that, I think it got edited out by and large.
Oh, that could have happened, yeah.
But I think it could have been very deep, and then people would have received it a lot better. Like, oh, they're trying to show his loneliness in a way you can't do, from like a novel into a movie adaptation. So they're taking a different route for it. It's still the same sort of thing to show his incredible loneliness and desire to be amongst people. And then I think it would have been much better perceived. But then again, I'm not making movies, so...
Yeah, better perceived by you, and it's hard to say whether that would have sold more tickets.
I think, the critics were so against it on many, many levels. I think that prevented a lot of sales of tickets. I know I never saw it in the theaters, and back then I was seeing all the Disney stuff when it was in the theater. Because we had one theater, it was a small town, what you going to do?
Well, the thing about Disney is they sort of earn themselves this position where it's like, oh, well, if it's from Disney, we're going to go see it because it's sort of like a guaranteed thing. Like the kids will like it, we'll laugh too, and there'll be nice songs.
Good for all ages, yeah.
Pretty architecture to look at. So, I guess
in this case, I never even read the book, and I still made the conscious decision not to see it. It's like, no, they clearly didn't have any real respect for the source material. By and large, and if they did have respect, it got trounced by some sort of executive decisions. So I'm not going to go see it, and I didn't go see it. A lot of the people I knew didn't go see it, who usually just go see anything. They'll go for just the Disney music. They totally skipped it.
Yeah. So even if you're a good company and you're known for good stuff, you have to keep up your game. There's no coasting. I think there is some coasting. You can coast a bit, but I think you use that up fairly quick. Especially
for something like Disney on a topic like that.
But, of course, since then, Disney's kind of come back and done
They
better
did
things.
learn their lesson on that one. If they're copying something from that's, not like a kid's story, like Hansel and Gretel or other Grimm's fairy tales, they do treat it with a little bit more closeness and respect.
Yeah.
Between them and, the Little Mermaid, they learned people do get upset when you altered what's considered some of the classics of literature.
Yeah. When did Toy Story? Was Toy Story the same year as Hunchback?
I think it came out slightly afterwards.
So Toy Story was later? And they kept two tracks going. They kept that sort of computer track with Toy Story and
just using the background as computer made versus still hand drawn animation.
And they kept a different sort of set of movies going with the traditional animation.
Yes.
Or semi-traditional, because obviously they're always improving, and they use computers in those now,
smooth things out, fix things up quicker, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm wondering if there will come a time fairly soon if those two sort of tracks won't just merge or cross or something like that.
I think so long as there's a desire in the market audience to see traditional styles, it'll still remain in some form. Mm-hmm. You watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and you see all the sparkles that they do when the dwarves are in the mine, because apparently back, if you're a dwarf, you can like mine pre-cut gems straight out of the earth.
Well, you can in all the games I've ever played.
So, you know, but yeah, all the sparkles in there were all hand done.
Oh, yeah.
And just looking at that and thinking, oh, God, the amount of animation hours that must have taken would have been forever. A shortcut of doing it digital, you know, like, okay, and then they sparkle all over here and here and here and here.
Yeah, and now it comes with your Windows Movie Maker.
Exactly, and it's honestly, it looks more like an actual sparkle you'd see in a gem than something that used to be drawn, you know, cell by cell by cell.
Uh-huh.
And so I can understand that, because it technically improves the quality and saves so many hours, it unboggles the mind. Because my mind did boggle thinking how long it would have taken to have drawn every one of them sparkles up proper.
Well, the question though, like, if it improves the quality, why not just do live action? Why not just record sort of... I suppose a diamond mine is hard to recreate.
It's not even a diamond mine, it's just a generic gem mine. They're getting all sorts of gems out of there. No regard for any level of geo-knowledge. It's just... Yeah, you just dig into the earth, and if you're a dwarf, you hit all sorts of gems.
I don't see why you're having so much of a problem with this. You've played Dwarf Fortress, and you've played
the gem
Minecraft.
Clusters in Dwarf Fortress remain consistent with the types of rock you find them in.
Oh, really?
Yes, they do. He sat down, he worked out a lot of that. If you want to find this kind of gem, you have to look in this kind of rock. Be it a specific type or just a category of rock.
Does he get down to levels like olivine and...
Yes, he does. If you find a proper cluster in olivine, you will find these sorts of gems in that.
Huh.
Some gems can only be found as a subcluster within a cluster of other gems, because that's how it's found in real life.
Cool.
It's the extra level of attention to detail that makes it worth learning your geology for. It's just...
Well, now I want to see a redone Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but with everything we've learned from Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and Dwarf Fortress, and Minecraft, and World of Warcraft, basically, and D&D. Anything with dwarfs in it sort of should influence the next Snow
On the
White
other hand,
movie.
they really did take their dwarfs and make it their own sort of thing. I mean, they had the dopey as his own, beardless, idiot sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But they did take this concept of, okay, these are what dwarves are like, this is what they do, and then they just said, okay, and you know what, they sing like crazy. Mm-hmm. Tolkien wound up doing something similar. I mean, that's how we got that wonderful Misty Mountain song.
Yeah.
Each one takes their own style on it, so I'm okay with Disney doing that. The Mine got me more than anything else on that.
Okay, alright, so the Mine, yeah.
But, I mean, it's not like that was actually a major part of the story. It was just something they were doing, so yeah, why not make it that way?
And I think Tolkien's dwarves liked taking baths, or most of them did. I think there might have been one or two that didn't like baths, but most of them liked baths.
They knew the qualities of hygiene.
But Snow White's dwarves didn't like baths.
No, they were hill dwarves or something. But, no, it works a little differently. But each one takes it to their own, makes it their own style. And I'm okay with that. As long as you own what you're making. Make it your own.
And the dwarf from, Game of Thrones. There's one dwarf in Game of Thrones.
But he's not like dwarf as in the fantasy, race
he's
dwarf.
A short guy.
Yeah. He's dwarf as in a medical terminology that has since become antiquated.
Yeah. But isn't it still technically that's the term for... I mean, they're called small people.
The medical term, I do believe, is dwarfism, but that doesn't make any of them dwarfs.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those weird terminology things. You can look up human subgroups on that and find names that nobody ever uses. Just weird, byproducts of previous decades. Yeah. Especially with some of the proto-humans and semi-humans that we had, they're still working out who branched off of what part of the tree, as humanity came to be. So they have all these weird sorts of things that nobody ever actually uses as a term because they realize, no, these two are together and this is actually connected over here, and they rearrange it.
Okay, yeah.
They might do it like if we ever figure out the whole human, tree and all our related, like cousin species of what's the term? Near humanoids, near humans, proto-humans, and all that, semi-humans.
Well, Homo.
Yeah,
the
entire
genus Homo.
Yeah, the genus Homo lineage. Well, if we can figure that all out enough to get it to each part, then we might change some names up to make it look a little more unified. No, I wouldn't put money on that bet, though.
Well, yeah, and people are always finding cool new, like, offshoots and different, like, apparently it wasn't that way, and, yeah, stuff like that.
So, yeah.
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, it's science. It's almost never fully settled.
Yeah. Well, the details, yeah. There's always details you can
finer details.
Yeah. The main, like, concepts and stuff are sort of settled.
We've got the broad strokes. Yeah, we're working on the small details.
And yeah, sort of details can sort of go on forever in some ways.
Yeah, who's to say that's not necessarily a good thing? I think it's a good thing.
Well, it keeps scientists working and keeps our brains exercising.
So net benefit, good for everybody.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if you can recall like a movie or something you've seen that was adapted from something else, and you say to yourself, they just didn't have any respect for that. So I am recalling some of the old Marvel movies they made before they got their act together. The Punisher and Captain America stuff, they really played fairly loose with the qualities that made them heroes. Or the outfits.
I remember not liking the Narnia movies. Now, there have been two that I know of, two, like, attempts at the Narnia movies. There's there was a British version that was made maybe in the 80s, I think. And then there's a later version that was made a couple years ago, I think in America, or I don't know where it was made actually, but
I think it was effectively qualifies as a Hollywood production.
I think it was more like Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't actually in Hollywood, it had their fingerprints all over it.
Yeah, and it's funny because even like I didn't even have the right idea about the sort of the color of the kid's hair or things like that. It's like, I thought it was a different color, and then in the movie it's this color. It's like, that doesn't seem right. And then I go back to the book, okay, apparently it was that color.
I was okay with the first movie because when I read it and that the kid comes, into the winter wonderland, and the Snow Queen picks him up and treats him with like, I've got these, goodies for you. It's like, I had never heard of that before. What the heck was that?
Oh, the Turkish Delight.
What the heck is a Turkish Delight?
Yeah.
It sounds dirty. What the heck is that? It's like, what is that? Are there bones in Turkish Delight? Is that a meat? Is that what?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was either.
And so actually being able to see it did make that a lot easier. It's like, okay, I think I may have seen that before.
So
it looks like it might be tasty.
Okay, have you ever had in the interim?
I've never even tried to hunt down a Turkish Delight to eat it. I mean, from what I've seen, they look good, but meh.
Well, there's a chocolate bar. There's Big Turk.
Yes.
With Turkish Delight in it, but it's not exactly the same thing.
No.
But I've had Turkish Delight, and it tastes good. It's like...
Is it something you'd be willing to get into a stranger's vehicle for? Because that's effectively what happened. It was like, come into my my sleigh van, kitty. I've got candies.
Well, how old was he when he... Like, is he 8?
Well, so the thing is, there's a little extra variance for it being during wartime, so any sweets should be, like, amazingly good to get, because,
That's
sugar
true.
rations.
I'm trying to think of my 8-year-old self. I'm trying to think if I would have, like, how much I liked candy.
Would you get into a stranger's sleigh for that?
I did like candy. I would sneak it if I could get it. Like,
I might have considered it because, it's really hard to lock the doors on a sleigh. You just jump out the side.
Yeah.
There's snow there, so you can tuck and roll. You got yourself some padding. You'd be fine.
And honestly, I can't remember if I ever was taught things like I think everyone...
Don't take candy from strangers.
Don't get into a stranger's car if you don't know them. I think I was taught that, but I don't remember specifically.
So I remember that sort of thing. They taught us in grade 1. They had somebody come in like a cop, and it was really, really boring, and I made sure to learn it so I'd never have to spend another one of these again.
Yeah. They made you listen to somebody's podcast about adaptations.
And the various tangents that crop up from it.
All to get to the point of, kids, that's what this whole podcast has been leading up to. Don't get into a vehicle with strangers.
Don't even take their candy. The candy can be drugged, man. I'm still not certain if that Snow Queen's Turkish Delight had some sort of like mind-altering chemicals that just made him more compliant. Because he seemed awfully weak-willed on that.
I'll tell you this. Go ahead and eat the candy, but if it tastes funny, don't swallow it.
Well, that's the thing, is I've never had Turkish Delight. If it was me there, I have no idea what funny Turkish Delight would taste like.
Well, I guess I'll tell you now, it tastes like candy. It tastes like you'd expect sort of candy to
What
taste.
we're talking about, like the licorice, Christmas candy that nobody wants to eat. That's got like orange, white, black, orange, white, black.
Well, from what I remember, it's just like jujubes. It's like that kind of stuff.
That's it?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just offer them jujubes?
I don't know if they had jujubes back then.
And that's
Maybe
one of
they did.
that's one of the good reasons for an adaptation. Is occasionally it brings you up to speed on things that no longer exist.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that also occurred in my mind is when I was watching hearing the songs in the Phantom of the Opera. It's like, this is in French. That's closer to a language I can understand, and that's pretty good. So like if they updated it to singing in English, I'd be okay with that. But would it lose something? Because nobody tries to update Shakespearean sonnets into modern English.
What if it was in like Jamaican, like the Jamaican that you can barely understand?
Oh, with the heavy accent.
Yeah.
Well, you could do that with almost any accent, really. You go far enough southern, and it's kind of hard to get some.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know there are people who can't even understand a British accent. Like you said, it's funny because
they go with a nice Danish accent. That'd be kind of fun too.
Danish. Yeah.
But they could all go with the Scottish accent, because eventually all accents degrade into Scottish.
Yeah, and I think there are Scottish accents where they're technically still speaking English, but it's like, I can't understand it.
They are putting some emphasis, interestingly.
Yeah, but yeah, you run into sometimes like certain people in America who hear a British accent, like from like an English, standard accent, and they're like, I don't understand you.
Or mind you, sometimes it works the other way. Occasionally, my wife, when she hears a British person talking, she can never remember anything that they've said. She just was listening to the accent itself.
Oh yeah, that can happen.
So there's a problem there. But I would have been okay if someone had like updated like Shakespeare's works into like a Canadian style.
How would that even be?
Well, you'd have to make it, adjust the words a little bit so you could add A to the end of all their sentences.
A at the end of every line.
And instead of, being all heartbroken over the loss of his love and going out partying with his cousin, Romeo would have just, gotten himself a 2-4 and some Timbits and, just stayed home for the weekend and gotten over it. Never meets Juliet. It's a shorter story that way. It doesn't really tell the whole thing, but it's true.
Do we have, would it be like, do we have rivalries in Canada like the Montagues and Capulets?
Well, there are always gang rivalries, but
I suppose it could be, gangs.
Well, I suppose you could make it a political thing that way. I mean, we do have like groups of people that go on. Like it could be the Trudeaus versus the Chrétiens.
Well, I wouldn't really believe it, but
it would be an entertaining thing to watch once.
Yeah.
I could have some fun with that. Yeah. Or the William Lyon Mackenzies, because they've had one prime minister and one failed rebel.
Mm-hmm.
So. Always an option. But do you think there's anything inherently wrong with updating any work, be it written work, be it a movie or anything, to keep it up to pace with how the average person can understand it, so that I might know what the heck this lady is feeding the kid, or what they're singing at the opera?
I guess that's a tough question because you don't want to. Yeah, you need those new audiences. Yes, but you don't want to. You don't want to break the story. I guess. Yeah, to me, the essential elements are the conflict and the story. Sometimes the story is rooted in its time, and it's difficult. Like
I could not imagine Tintin taking place in the modern era. His adventures were firmly in that part of the zeitgeist of the day.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing, of course, about Tintin is technology in the field of I guess he's a journalist. Technology in his field has advanced so that he would be basically on the phone with, like on the cell phone, or, well, I don't know, depending on what part of the world he's in.
He's tweeting his adventures as he goes.
Yeah, be tweeting, yeah.
Being shot at by criminals. What's up with that again? Must learn to use gun.
It's funny, when I first read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, my dad actually was reading them to us, but I didn't think of them as, you know, a story in time. Like, I just thought it was a magical era. But the latest film, when it came out, they actually had a scene from, you know, the bombing going over, you know, Britain, and the kids they had to go to the country because of the
less chance of getting
blitz.
Bombed.
Yeah. And in that sense, that story sort of embedded itself, like in my imagination, it embedded itself in that era, even though the story, like the whole Narnia story, probably isn't necessarily a World War II type.
No, although
story.
You can clearly see it as an escapist fiction, because the kids are trying to escape the horrors that they've seen in the city and the mundanity of the rural life as they retreat into a fantastic realm of talking animals that for some reason only want humans to be their rulers. There's some weird things going on there. Issues for another time on that.
Yeah. Well, so if they did adapt Narnia, for example, the Chronicles of Narnia, to a modern era, would the children, like, they couldn't come from Britain because Britain isn't in war right now, so they wouldn't have the same excuse for going off to the country or whatever. But maybe they could be Syrian kids or Afghani kids.
Well, they could just be, refugee kids from almost any war-torn area picked up, and this is the new foster place for them.
Okay, yeah.
So that could work that way. Sad to say, there's always the issue of how much people will be able to relate to someone who's not as much like them. So in the case of a lot of people who've read it, they better be British kids. Otherwise, I have no idea what it's like being a kid in this war-torn part of the world. That's far away from where I grew up. I can't relate to these kids.
It's possible, although
it's sadly all too real.
Yeah. But, a lot of the popular literature in Britain is international literature, including especially like Indian literature from India is quite
all around
popular.
The Commonwealth, at least.
And bestsellers here in Canada and the U.S. include things like The Kite Runner and Salman Rushdie's books and things like that. So it's definitely, I think, like our sort of modern market is very international.
So does that make things a little harder then to establish, as being a localized one back when you could do that? Because the people who were initially buying the book were all more localized as opposed to got to make sure the international audience buys it.
Yeah, it could be. It could be that. That might be the case.
I know Hollywood's having a hard time making movies more international. They've been so focused on just America, 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 and they say, wow, look at the money we get for the overseas. That totally dwarfs the American money. We're going to put more people from outside of America into our movies.
Although
we need
if
to
I
attract
can
this audience.
Compare, like, there's Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses has almost a similar thing to Narnia. It's like people enter a different world because their plane exploded. Like
so it's lost. No, I'm going to probably get hate mail on that.
Sort of there's this traumatic event, and then, two people get transformed or transported or whatever. So it's a similar thing, but it's in I say modern context, but this is now from the 80s, I think, that this plane
I believe
went
it was,
down
yeah.
or whatever. So, yeah.
3 decades ago.
Yeah.
Whew. Right now I feel old. I remember when that book was new and hip.
Yeah.
And threatening his life, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for a while, so final thoughts on adaptation.
I think you have to take a little bit of leeway with the whole thing. It's not. There's almost no way to adapt perfectly between the media formats. Everybody has just got to learn to accept that we can still try, do different things. Eventually, we're going to find better techniques that help out for this and that. It's never going to be a perfect thing. They never work out. There's advantages and disadvantages to each that you just can't port them so easily. That's it. I think music is a much more acceptable way to go than just trying to make up your own bit yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
It buys you a little bit more leeway. You might be able to sell more soundtrack stuff for it. And I think people are generally more receiving of that sort of change. That said, do give them warning. I have been told back in the day when Blockbuster still existed that a lot of people were returning as Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, because you didn't tell me this was a musical. I need one. I want a different movie now. You've ruined my evening. Rawr.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's kind of there. All you have to do is flip to the back of your cartridge and take a look. But so a little warning on music. Otherwise, I give it an opportunity to play out and do some changes and make sure it's okay to update for the more modern audience, because you got to keep people paying attention. Otherwise, it becomes just another forgotten book or story or movie that no one really pays attention to or even cares.
Yeah.
Even if the adaptation, updating is not perfect, it's still the way to go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have an email address, thesimulationist@gmail.com. We have these podcasts also go up on our YouTube channel, but it's just the podcasts. youtube.com/thesimulationist, and we have a Facebook page where you can type in comments and converse at facebook.com/thesimulationist. And I've been Josh Trelevin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
Send us money.